Valerie Matthias joins me today in another celebration of a hymn journal. Hi, Valerie.
Hello, Justin. Good to be here. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks. What a fun ride. What a run we've had. When we did the When From Death I'm Free hymn journal a year ago, and Easter came in the middle of a pandemic, who knew that Christmas would still be a pandemic season? Crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff.
And here we are again, doing a little bit lighter. We decided this time around to do half of the hymn journal this Advent, and we'll do the other half next year in the Advent Christmas of 2021 season. I'm really looking forward to that. We chose a good year to do the odd numbers. Today was this was a very odd year, but really enjoyed it. What did you think of this hymn journal experience?
Yeah, because you were able to compare it to One From Death I'm Free earlier in 2020, more kind of late winter, early spring. Ponder Anew, summer of 2020. This one was so unique and different because we specifically set out to only do half.
Yeah.
And I found that schedule to be very helpful for me. That I knew it was not my mission to accomplish the whole hymn journal. It was my goal just to dabble in, listen to, get where I could be, but also have no guilt and worry about where I wasn't going to be, because this is still going to be available to me in 2021. That feels good.
That's awesome. I think that freedom belongs to the hymn journal experience. What was anything jump out at you? Anything kind of strike you this time through?
On a personal note, with the hymn journal in mind, I really enjoyed how my season of Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany were almost like one fluid march.
Yeah.
I think often, and I think a couple of these things were interrelated, COVID pandemic being one of them. But normally in my life, when Advent is here, I know I'm supposed to be in quiet contemplation, but the world is screaming Christmas at me. And to be very honest, even kind of my church, not in the corporate worship setting, but in all of the things that we're invited to. There's a lot of Christmas celebrations. There are two ladies groups in our congregation that have Christmas celebration. There's Advent by Candlelight, which I know is Advent, but feels a little like Christmas to me. Yeah. The Board of Ed has a Christmas party. The elders do something special there's just a lot of Christmas. And so sometimes by the time I get to the Christmas part, I think in my head, I wish this were already over.
Yeah.
Which is not fun to say out loud, but it's the truth. That did not happen to me in 2020. Advent was very much Advent. Christmas, those 12 days were very much Christmas. And this Epiphany, that January 6th felt, for probably the first time in my adult life, as an actual something.
Yeah.
And I really do think that the hymn journal helped with that, because I walked into the season knowing that this is one fluid, beautiful progression.
Yeah, that's cool. It was fun to have to pick hymns and decide how many Christmassy hymns, but don't do them too early, and you want to do kind of more Advent-y hymns. But then let's do some Christmas hymns that are also Epiphany, so that we can kind of get in 12 hymns the full gamut. And even in 6 at a time, we were able to do Advent and Christmas and Epiphany. Yeah, that's fun. Were there any of the chapters or devotions or visual faith art or anything somebody posted in our group that kind of really touched you or meaningful to you?
Two things come to mind, one for me personally, and then one that I saw that is worth noting. I would like to note. One was the Joy to the World devotion. What you wrote in that devotion really hit home to me. I don't know if the hymn journal community knows this, but Justin, you have been so kind in each of the hymn journals to allow me to see the devotions early, not for anything to do with art, but my major in college was English. I like words. I like mucking around in language, and I really like theology. And so the idea that I got to read those devotions beforehand is such a unique privilege. So I have told you this, Justin, but haven't told the community. Of the 3 hymn journals, these are my favorite devotions. They're just fantastic. In fact, I serve on a staff now as a teacher, and each of the teachers are in charge of devotions during different days, and we can bring whatever we would like to bring to the table. I got to use this devotional during my times. Did an Advent, was able to do a Christmas. I was able to do an Epiphany one. So
awesome.
Thank you. My staff hears your voice at the devotional table. So thank you.
That's cool.
Anyway,
that's a neat way to also share what we're doing. So one of the questions in the last kind of closing unit of the pop-up of the Facebook group simply has to do with not only what's your next step, but how might you share it, or what did you do to share it? And that simple kind of, I got to do a devotion anyway, I might as well take my hymn journal along. I think it's a cool
Yeah.
attitude.
No, it's fantastic. And for the hidden journal community to know, um, even if you don't think yourself particularly musical, particularly artistically creative, if you like solid devotions,
Mm.
this is a great place to be. Your Joy to the World devotion was extremely powerful for me. This idea of poinsettias, and then what Karen Hunter was able to do with the poinsettias, the thorns, and the
Yeah,
lilies.
and the Easter
That
lilies. Yeah.
super powerful. But one of the pieces that I saw in the hymn journal experience from one of our participants, one of our artists, Allie, actually, do you
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
Allie?
yeah.
Her art for I want to say it was Noel, Peace Fall on Me, the pieces that were coming down.
Oh, right,
And
right.
she made those puzzle pieces into the different flags of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
That was awesome. And the more you look at it, the more you recognize how she shaped it to make it look like a globe. Um, Hats off to Allie. That was a beautiful image of a piece of art that had been made beforehand, not thinking that color would maybe particularly be added that way. But Allie saw that and said, "This is what I want to do with it." And it was such a unique visual devotion just to see it in an instant. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, there've
How
been
about you,
a
Justin?
lot of those. Yeah. Oh, how about me? Yeah, things that jumped out to me. Of course, I enjoy the podcast stuff because I get to get my hands dirty and kind of interact with some people and ask some questions that I have going in, or that I know that they've got good answers for, or whatever. Just thinking of that the last podcast that I got to do with Jeff Gibbs on the wise men, that was really meaningful. Love talking to Gibbs. Just knows his stuff. He's got such a humble heart, and he points you so clearly to Jesus. And of course, Conrad Gempf, Jeff Gibbs, the first time we've had him on the podcast, Conrad, the third time we've had him, he's been with us the whole time. He's kind of like the patron theology professor of Next Step Press, I guess. I don't know. But again, enjoyed his conversation. That's when we with Conrad Gempf, we talked about joy to the world and the new creation, and not only like restoring, but going beyond that in the creation. And just throughout, I got to talk to some of the artists. Next year, more artists will be on the docket than there were this year. So get to hear from our illustrators as well. And I got to talk to my mom and my sister. And my sister's, these songs that go back a ways now. They've been a part of our celebration of Christmas as a family. My Justin Rosso family, because Brooke did them for a long time, and my kids were super excited. I mean, I'm not sure if I did this hymn journal because it was my sister's music, or because my kids made me, because they all wanted me to do these songs from Brooke because that's just Christmas to them. And then to have my mom do some art. The Allie's work was based on an illustration from my mom, and be able to interview them both and hear about their faith experience. It just made it it's a special thing when your family can do something together like that. So that's probably what made this hymn journal especially meaningful for me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the build up and progression between each of these three separate hymn journals, and how they interact as a whole piece, and yet they have their own personalities.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Well, it was good. The first one we partnered with Kip Fox and did some traditional hymns. This time with Brooke and Brendan, and they had a couple of songs that were original, and then some kind of newer renditions of some more traditional hymns. And I really like that dynamic as well. The Ponder Anew right in between was all traditional hymns, and I think it's been a good mix. It's been fun to do both of those, so it's been a good experience.
Yeah, I appreciate when adding color to pages, being able to either listen to the podcast that you discussed. I got to jump into Conrad's book, his audiobook, Jesus Asked.
Yeah.
You had linked something, and I thought, I'm going to go check that out. So I got to listen to that. I really enjoyed that, kind of layering that on top. The stuff didn't necessarily pertain to the hymn that I was working on, but it didn't matter. I was filling my ears with something that was worthy of being heard. But also, going through hymn journals and layering music and lyrics to art, just so powerful. Your ears are going to hear something anyway, so you might as well give them something good to listen to.
Mm.
Your eyes are going to be looking anyway, so you might as well have them looking at something that's good for you, right? Whatever is honorable, whatever is true, whatever
Yeah.
is right. That's what we should be feeding on and digesting. So thank you for putting forth quality resources that allow God's people to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, enjoy. That's of course delight's an
Delight.
important word for us. So that's enjoyment as a part of that. And perhaps more than anyone that it takes a whole team to pull something like this off. So yeah, it's been great. The artists, I thought they did a great job the way they married the illustrations with the text. Just been there were a couple of that really, I think, I mean, the art, those faith experiments, the artwork there makes those faith experiments. And just to see, one of the podcasts again with the Pastor Jeff Meyer and his conversation about his Isaiah 6 story, and how Pat Meyer was able to put Isaiah's in that visual faith experiment, Isaiah's story in there. Just so many different unique details and joyful little surprises, and it was really good. One of the things I really enjoyed this time around too was the like, here's a picture of my Advent calendar, and I got it almost all the way. I did fill it in, although I think like the 29th or 30th is when I finally did the last couple of boxes. But I haven't walked through Advent like that quite before, at least not trying to record something, either a word or an image. And it really helped
How
me
did you
see.
how
Yeah,
did you find the experience? Was it helpful? Was it distracting? Tell me about it.
oh no, it was very helpful. I think it was. It seemed like a lot when you started with the blank piece of paper, and think I saw one of the people in our group, and this is what's so good about having that Facebook group. You get ideas from other people. I think it was Karen Wishman, one of our founding members, that had put like numbers in each of the spaces to help her know which was what day, and I did that then too, and just really enjoyed it. I think I got behind almost immediately, but then was able to catch up. You get 2 or 3 days behind and you just kind of catch up, and then pretty soon I had a rhythm. And I would say after going through such a crazy and often busy time with Christmas, it gave me a chance to really wonder, was there a meaningful event or a word from God in my devotion, or in something I read or heard, or even just a family moment that was really important. I got to record that, and then looking back at it, that's the thing that you don't know when you're doing it, is the power of
Yes.
looking back. And so now I can look
Yes.
at all of those and see kind of what that Advent Christmas season was like for me, and themes that came out of it. So I found it to be really helpful. Actually, it was fun to do.
I think that sometimes we go about these practices thinking, I'm going to do this in this moment so that I can be present and I can block out all the distraction and just be here. And that is valid. That's a
Mhm.
valid practice. But what you touched on, which you don't know until you've marched through it, is the gift. It's because it's really a gift of being able to look back and see the greater picture, the tapestry, the how all of the pieces have made this whole season one big beautiful story, the story that God already knew, but we don't know because we're marching through it as we go. Yeah, the ability to remember, to
Mm.
reflect and remember, so powerful.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you about the music. So I have known these songs for a long time. I remember when you and I kind of interviewed Brooke, and she played just a couple verses in one of the songs, and you kind of really enjoyed it. So we played, the music got played as a part of the podcast. We also had it available in a couple other different formats, YouTube and a couple other places. What was your general impression of that music, and how that kind of spoke into your season this year?
So Brooke, in that initial interview, she had said sometimes when you hear the same song over and over and over, you don't even hear the words anymore because you're just it's all just it's almost like a stamp. It's you don't see the parts, it's just the overall.
Mhm.
When she took the lyrics to familiar hymns and set it to a new melody, your ear was forced to hear the lyrics for the first time. And I'll admit, because what are we but honest with one another?
That's right.
Sometimes it was distracting, but that's kind of the point. It's to distract you, to almost resensitize you instead of resensitize you to these words. So the first time I heard one of the songs, my ear was picking up everything. Wasn't able to do what I wanted here because I'm constantly right. but listening it over repeatedly, still hearing the words new, but not being so distracted. So a resensitizing without being overly stimulated. I don't know if that's the right word, but I appreciated it. She has a gorgeous voice. They are talent. They are musically talented together. They had talked about a certain kind of chemistry that they had found in college. And I really liked when you interviewed for the podcast to hear the musicians, the process
Yeah. Yeah.
that songwriter goes through to create a song based on scripture. I'm thinking specifically about the podcast between Brooke and Katie and yourself for the hymn
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
and the process that Katie as an artist went through to make
Yeah.
the art based on scripture, and the processes were so similar.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. Absolutely. I loved that. And then I got to interview Brendan that on the next podcast and talk about some of the ways that they did something really interesting and unique with the melody lines or accompaniment. So that was fun. It added a lot to me too. And I really appreciate what you said. These are familiar hymns. That's what makes them really special to us. But to hear them in unique, new ways lets you hear them with fresh ears. I think that's probably one reason why we do this, right? That
Oh,
we
yes.
have, we've been through Advent before, but we've never done this faith experiment. We've never done that. We've never tried to pray that way. We've never done visual prayer around that theme before. We've never thought about it. I remember I was really stumped on what I was going to do for the Epiphany devotion because the Epiphany stuff. I mean, you've done you've done it a bunch, and when I imagined Joseph having to deal with these gifts that the wise men dropped off, and now he's got a pack to go to Egypt in the middle of the night. And I just imagine him like loading the trunk of his camel, being like, seriously, what am I supposed to do with this? There's that kind of insight of a different perspective that gave me joy in that devotion. So
I think anytime you can put flesh on the text, can you smell it? Can you hear it? Can you taste it? These are real people. These aren't made up stories. It's so powerful. It's so unbelievably powerful. And your devotions are able to do that. Conrad's able to do that in that book, Jesus Asked. He's bringing context in it's so helpful. It's helpful for me as a follower of Jesus.
that's cool. Well, hey, Brendan, the guy who did the layouts for all the hymns, and he's the guy playing the guitar with Brooke, he also put together a slideshow of just some of the artwork that we did this year in this Advent group. We'll do some more next year. But before we get to that, I'd like to play that at the end. Before we get to that, Valerie, we like to ask the question, what next step is Jesus inviting you into? What promise is he giving you to hold on to? So how about for you personally, coming out of this Advent, what next step is Jesus putting in front of you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So some of the hymn journal community knows I went back to teaching. I took 9 years off to be a stay-at-home mom, and now 2020, COVID be darned, I'm in the classroom, and I'm super excited to do it. I have the privilege of teaching 5th and 6th grade religion while my 7th and 8th graders are learning catechism with the pastor. And we have built a relationship now with these 5th and 6th graders. And so I am going to introduce visual prayer to them in these upcoming weeks. We're going to start with the secret code prayer. We're going to use the stained glass prayer. I'm going to walk them through what does visual prayer look like. So that's an immediate next step for me that I'm excited to do. And actually the catalyst of that, one is it's an important thing to do. The other thing is actually Visual Faith Ministry for the first time is putting together a virtual retreat, and it's based on prayer practices. It's actually entitled Abide, Prayer Practices for Anxious Times. And it's going to come out on March 6th. And because the hymn journal community is in the Next Step Press community and the Visual Faith community are in some ways intertwined, I'm looking forward to that as a next step for me personally. And when more information comes out about that, we will definitely let this group of people know what that looks like. But to be able to can't go out and tell people about visual prayer the way I used to, but to be able to use something virtual, the way that Next Step Press has been able to equip people through online media platforms, to be able to be a part of that is very exciting and very beneficial, very humbling.
That's cool. I'm glad you get to get back to that kind of sharing some of those practices. I remember I've told the story before in some podcast somewhere about how you and I sat down in in the lounge of a retreat center at a pastor's retreat, and you and I both happened to be there, and I said, hey, would you mind? I've got this new thing I'm trying to explore and trying to put together this discipleship travelogue, and I want a couple of different experiments that you could run with prayer, and I know that you do this kind of thing. And that's when you first showed me the secret code prayer and the stained glass prayer and a couple other things that made it in our first an Advent ago, that wasn't even a hymn journal, that was a
no, it was a
travelogue.
travelogue, which, by the way, Justin, I'm looking forward to future travelogues when and if Next Step Press would like to do that. That was an amazing experience. Yeah, the time that you're referring to was October 2019.
Oh yeah,
which seems like a lifetime ago. Just a lifetime ago.
Yeah, like 14 months or so. Yeah, right. Yeah, forever ago. Yeah.
How about you, Justin? What are the next steps for Next Step Press, or for you personally, or Next Step?
Well, I think for me personally, building on that idea of capturing something every day, I thought that was a practice that helped give me a rhythm and helped, quite honestly, keep my eyes and ears open. And that's something I knew already, that when you are looking for those kinds of things, you'll be able to see them more clearly. That kind of should be obvious, but we don't often walk that way. So I've started trying to see where I see Jesus active, whether it's in an event or in the word that I'm reading or hearing or listening to, and then capture that. So I've got a record of it. So like just yesterday, I was at, you heard some of the delight reading when I was reading that live on Facebook, kind of between the hymn journals. And I kept talking about my Aunt Elva, who was listening. And then you heard her go in the hospital, and we had her funeral, family funeral was yesterday up in Frankenmuth. And, she was 96 years old. So we said goodbye to Aunt Elva. And as a part of that service, and then also there at the interment, John 11, John 11, and I've heard John 11, I've preached on John 11. And but it struck me this time that when Jesus says to Martha, do you believe your brother will rise again? And Martha says, I know he will rise again on the last day. And Jesus at the resurrection on the last day. And I know my brother will rise again at the resurrection on my last day. And Jesus' response is, I am the resurrection and the life. And it struck me, maybe not for the first time, but definitely in a uniquely significant way, that Martha was talking about the end times resurrection of the dead. And Jesus was saying, I am the end times resurrection of the dead, standing in front of you already now. It's Jesus come in the middle of the story, like we talked about with Conrad on the podcast. Maybe that's why it was kind of didn't get around. So, notice that, no big deal. But I found actually then when I sat down, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday yet, I actually, I've got a notebook and I recorded some of that here. It's not in a hymn journal, but I'm recording these kind of moments that I see as I go, so that I can look back in a month, in a year, and just kind of remember where I was. And Aunt Elva's funeral will be connected to me with that idea that Jesus is not just like the resurrection in general, but the end times promised resurrection, inauguration of God's kingdom on earth as is in heaven. He's that resurrection ahead of time.
Yes.
So I'll hear that Bible verse different next time.
Anyway, wait, I do want to hear more about your next steps, but I do want to say this as a visual faith coach. When you record your things in the journal that you have, it looks like it has lines on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you find that practice works for you and you keep going back to the lines, do it. Please do it. Keep going and do it. If you find for whatever reason you're not drawn to the lines the way you were drawn to that candle picture, it could be the format of the document. So here's a suggestion, and you can take this or leave this. If you get a small desktop calendar, not a giant, just a manageable one, but it's got the little squares in it, the squares will act like those triangles in the candles. And then, all I have to do is fill up this one tiny spot. It's visual. It's always there. I know what days I missed. Just run an experiment. If the journal works for you, keep going. Don't ever look back. But if you find yourself falling out of the habit, it might actually be the format of how you're capturing it.
Cool. I love that. Thanks for that suggestion. I love the idea of running an experiment. So we'll see. That's a cool concept. Thanks, Valerie. So that's for me personally. I'm going to try to record something, anything, record anything every day
I
for a
love
while
it.
and see what happens.
How about for Next Step Press? What is on the docket? What's coming up?
Yeah, so coming up for Next Step Press, you know this because you are a Next Step patron. Thank you, but you saw an early sneak peek at the cover. This is a cover of what will be our next publication. It is called The Emotional Devotional, Following Jesus in Every Emotion, and you'll notice that was written by teenage girls for teenage girls. So this is, I'm really proud of my kids. This was the brainchild of my daughter Naomi. I was talking with my close friend Steve and Jamie Wishman from Breathe Life Ministry, and we began to work on the idea for a book kind of like this, where you notice yourself and your emotions in God's presence and invite Jesus into that process, and just kind of real honestly and openly bring God's word and your emotional experience and the presence of Jesus and the Spirit kind of together, and let Jesus do whatever he's going to do with the emotions you're experiencing. And Steve's son Josiah suggested The Emotional Devotional as a name for that book, and Steve and I both laughed and thought it was a good idea, but I was kind of like, that's a great name, but it kind of sounds like it'd be a book like written by teenage girls for teenage girls. And my daughter was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, no, that's a great idea. I think we can do that. So my daughter Naomi and Steve's daughter Gabby, and my daughter Lizzie and Steve's daughter Ellie and my daughter Kate are 19, 18, 17, 15 and 14, or 14 and 13, or whatever they are. They're all teenagers. And they have put together this book of devotions on just the emotions and people in the Bible that experience an emotion. And I don't know, the thing that really I love about it, that makes it a Next Step Press publication really, is that it's not there to fix your feeling. It's there to help you bring that feeling to Jesus and let him do something with it.
That's fantastic.
So it doesn't tell you how to, not be lonely. It tells you, let's bring that loneliness to Jesus and invite him into it. And that attitude of, not fixing it, but bringing it to Jesus is really, really cool. So I'm proud of my kids. It's still got to get proofread and it's got to go to the publisher, but we've got the cover. We're in the final stages, and I'm looking forward to that coming out.
Very cool. Congratulations. I look forward to it. Hey, and more congratulations are in order. Is that correct? Is there? Yes.
Yeah, well, yes, thanks. I mentioned the Delight book before. That book just won the Best Indie Book Award. That's the best independently published book in the Christian category, and they got entries from around the country and around the world. And the Delight won the Christian category. So
congratulations!
Thank you.
I wish I had like streamers and confetti and do it virtually.
Yay! Yeah,
awesome.
really pleased with that. And that's working on getting the audio version, the audiobook for Delight out. And that's if you don't have it, if you haven't read it, I really am pleased with the way it turned out. And it's neat to hear somebody else say they thought it was pretty good too.
It is healthy validation, really, to say that, hey, what you have created, someone else outside has seen value in it, other than your close family and friends, right? Yeah. We're going to cheer you on no matter what. No, yeah. This was weighted against others and found worthy of being awarded. It's awesome. I think it's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that very much. And I'm excited to get to work then on, so we are planning on another travelogue, discipleship travelogue. And this one is going to be in that time between, you can do it anytime you want to, but it's specifically designed to work between Easter and Pentecost. And that You Follow Me volume will be focused on the Holy Spirit and different ways the Holy Spirit shapes us to be like Jesus. And that will be that kind of travelogue. That'll come out sometime before Easter is the plan. Got to, write it and everything, but that's the plan. And of course, Valerie, we're resetting that When From Death I'm Free, our very first hymn journal together.
Yes, I'm looking into where you are, and I see that hymn.
Yes, we've got the When From Death right here. Yep, this guy right here. So we're the first time we did it as a pop-up group, and it was great. We had over 700 people in it. We've learned some stuff about online communities and about social learning groups, and so we've already opened up a 12-unit social learning group on When From Death I'm Free. Invite everybody who is a part of this Advent group to be a part of that as well. And I already saw somebody post that they're really excited to be doing this again next year. They did it last year, but they had a lot of blank pages, and they're looking forward to going back to the blank pages, but also to the ones they've done already. And we're going to see how that goes, kind of running it a second year in a row. We'll try it out.
Yeah, for the hymn journal community. So as Justin mentioned, all those units are going to be in there right away. So, and the units correspond with the chapters. You can go about it in whichever schedule you want to go, but it's going to be there for you. And I think you might find it specifically helpful if you are a person who would like to run a small group on the side, something, maybe you're doing it with Zoom, maybe you have a small Facebook group, maybe it's people that are meeting face to face, but all the content is there. So your podcasts, your extra engagement, your articles. And in fact, we're going to try to pull some of the artwork from 2020 into the group for some inspiration. I find it very helpful to see what someone else has done and say, oh yeah, I'll use that color scheme. I'll get that down while I'm listening. I find that very helpful. So we're excited to run the experiment of When for Death I'm Free, not as a pop-up, but as a social learning group. We're getting a little more polished.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And I love how you said this might be a good time to invite some other people. If you already have the book, maybe buy a book for your friend or for your neighbor, get some people together, get a small group at your church, get a couple relatives. Everybody's Zooming right now. I know we had several Zoom groups going on for the light and the darkness, and they really enjoyed it. And several of them are going to roll right into When from Death I'm Free. So we're really excited about that too.
I wanted to ask you, Justin, as a participant, if I had engaged in When from Death I'm Free before and I already own the hymn journal, would you suggest sticking with that hymn journal, clean slate, new hymn journal? What do you think?
Well, that's a really good question. Have you did the hymn journal too? Mine's got some blank pages. I don't know how many. Do you think you want to start over? Or do you think you want to? Have you made that decision for yourself?
No, I was hoping to hear what you say. So yes, I do have some blank pages. What I didn't do last time is I didn't date anything. Nothing in the first one says 2020. So what I almost think I would like to do is I'd like to go into the old one, date things 2020. And then if new stuff gets added by me in the same hymn journal, I will be definitely sure to add 2021 to that. So that in future years, looking back and say 2020, 2021. But I also see value in grabbing a new hymn journal too, kind of clean slate, and then having, this is what I did in 2020, this is what I did in 2021. I don't think there's a right or wrong way of doing it, but just to know that the option is there.
I think that's a great idea. I think my hymn journal has enough blank pages in it that I'm not going to be lacking for things to do this time around. So I probably won't buy a new one for myself, but it does give me a chance then to buy one and give to somebody else that I thought might appreciate it. So I think the idea that I've been through it once and know the ropes a little, I think the material's rich enough that we can go back to it again without feeling like we're wearing it out just in the second year.
No, I agree.
But because you've been through it once, you know what you're inviting somebody into. So I think this is a much easier year to ask someone to go through, a Lent experience with you.
A third idea with the new hymn journal, keep the same hymn journal, you could do a hybrid thing. Now this is out of the box, crazy visual faith creativity. You could use the first one as a scrapbook, take the things that you like, pull them out, put them in the new, layer them up.
Can you add some washi tape maybe?
Add some washi tape.
Yeah, you could do that.
You could even do like kind of flipping kind of stuff where this is what I did, this is where I am. I mean, sky's the limit. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that'll be fun. Maybe I know every now and then you'll see a church getting rid of some hymnals, or you could always, I don't know if it's legal to photocopy a page out of a hymnal, but some way get yourself there are web pages that have like the music, but you could even add your own hymns into the hymn journal if you wanted to do that too. So lots of different options, fun stuff. Hey, this Advent hymn journal has been really fun, really special, really wonderful. I've loved doing it. I really am looking forward to next Advent when we get to do the even numbers and revisit some of the music and some of these texts and some of these same visual faith artists. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. But hey, as we sign off, Valerie, thanks for taking time. And this video was put together by Brendan Norp. And thanks very much, Brendan, for putting this together. And thank you to all of you wonderful people in our Facebook community, all the people a part of the Next Step Press community. So glad to have you on this journey as we take a next step following Jesus together.
To us a child is born, unto us a child. Though we were still helpless, Jesus chose to come to us, to us, unto us, to us, merely us. God has shown His grace to us. Oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. That mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Oh come, Emmanuel. Noel, 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 born unto you, Noel, 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 Noel. Fear not, for He comes, Noel. Veil their faces to the presence, as with ceaseless voice they cry, Alleluia, 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 Lord Most High. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive its King. Let every heart prepare Him a room, and heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. Raise, raise the song on high, joining on the glad reply. Hail, the King is drawing nigh. I will sing my songs to praise Him.
Great. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Super long.
It was longer than I thought it was going to be, but I never got bored.
I didn't get bored either. I don't know if the viewer will get bored. Time will tell.
I mean, wait,
You're still recording.
where?
I don't know. There's a little red
Oh,
button
there it
up
is.
there.